There we go. Hope I didn't forget to mute the mic. Okay, I've had my dinner now, but I'm only gonna play one more battle. You know, didn't really think about it till now about how sad that I am about losing Stream Raiders. Hang on. I'm gonna start the battle in a minute. There's something else I want to do.
I know you've all had the conversation of
let's do the battle. I think this actually will be the last time I ever play Stream Raiders as a captain and as a, you know. Thank you, Ramo Chowd, Flame Fist RS, Twinkle Tard, and Nice G for placing units. Again, there's my future Ranger Rogue. Flame Fist, here's your tiny Band-Aid healer. Level 11. That's a cute healer. And Nizel G, thank you for... Here's your Grand Silent Vampire. The Grand Vampire boosts nearby vampires after each kill, and the unit that lands when it attacks its foes. Each unit defeated heals vampire for 15% of its HP. Twinkle Tard gave me a level 30 Farsight Bomber. Bombers toss explosives from a short range, dealing high damage to everyone caught in the blast, good against all types of melee units. The Farsight Bomber has an increased range. No, that's not. Wait. Where's your other unit? Oh. And there's the level 30 Focused Buster, a fast robot assassin unit that detonates itself to deal massive damage. The Focus Buster deals more damage but has a smaller blast area and has higher health values. And now for the 4 units of Ramo Chowd. First, a Rally Bugoid Warrior. A Bugoid Rally Warrior, whatever you want to call it. A basic human melee unit that deals high damage to armored opponents and reduces their ability to heal. Great against all types of armored units. The Rally Warrior grants a damage boost to nearby allies. Thank you for the Bugoid Warrior. Thank you for the Drone Guardian Fairy. A flying elf support unit that heals allies in a large area, prioritizes allies with low health. The Guardian Fairy provides defense to healed allies. And a Farsight Mischievous Bomber. Farsight Bomber has increased range. I think we... Yeah, just like that. But a mischievous one. And last but not least, an LED Trooper Rally Warrior. The Rally Warrior grants a damage boost to nearby allies. Oh man. I'm starting to get kind of emotional at the thought of losing this. I put so much time into this game, not just as a captain, but as a player, as a viewer. I started in November of 2020, right after the last election, sort of as a way to get my mind off of current events. And here I am, probably needing it now more than ever, and it's going to go away. I would be more excited for what lies ahead if I wasn't so scared. This isn't my last battle, but I can't play all 9 hours left of this. I will play this battle. I'm not sure how many more I'll do. Man, my rogue's so fast. Congrats. I'm gonna give Ramo Chowd the 200 gold. I'm gonna pick random on this one. Flame Fist, you got the Musketeer Scrolls. Congratulations, and I get 5 Shinobi Scrolls. Neon Apocalypse Geisha Galleon. This battle is about a 14-year-old boy struggles with depression, maybe a really cool orc robot. Haha. That's pretty funny. How many more battles will I actually do? Honestly. I wish I'd had more chances to play as a captain than as a viewer, to be honest. I just can't have this being my last battle, to be honest. I can't do it. in order to do the thing. With anticipation that I'm never going to be playing Stream Raiders again, I have to do this. We're gonna boost everything to its highest value. The unthinkable. Orc Slayer is at level... Wow. What the heck? The Necro goes to 26. We'll boost it up further. Gladiator. Fairy. Oh yeah, I can't upgrade the Bowl Lancer. That's going to have to stay at 27. Want to know what I'm listening to? This is what I'm listening to. I'm going to do this in silence. Time to pick a different song. I'll go back to this one actually. In order to play the battle. But first I'm going to get to level 30. And here we are. Then we'll do the healer next, I guess. 3 units on my battlefield. Yeah, it's pretty good. Night Chill BC, and again, Nicel G. Thanks for hopping in and giving me a unit. It's always appreciated. Okay, well, let's have a look. Oh yeah, I did say this would be my last battle. Well, I'm gonna do another battle anyway. There's my Swiftfoot Rogue again. Night Chill BC, Epic Crawler Warrior. Epic Crawler Vengeful Warrior, a basic human melee unit that deals high damage to armored opponents and reduces their ability to heal. Great against all types of armored units, the Vengeful Warrior explodes on death. Thank you for the Epic Crawler Warrior, Night Chill, and thank you, Nicel G, for a Bounty Hunter Volley Master Musketeer. A human ranged fighter that boosts the attack power of nearby ranged units, prioritizes attacking ranged enemies. The Volley Master's Musketeer's aura has a wider range. Wipe against tech freaks and bull stuff. Rumble Dome, yabba dabba badoo, yabba dabba doo. Put the curse on top of the rumble thing, and let's go. Look at him go. And that's that. I give it to you, Nicel. I think you deserve the 50 gold. I get a Paladin Scroll. I grant the rewards. And we move to next battle, I guess. Since this is my last, definitely my last battle. I mean, I would never lie about stuff like that. Never. We'll just, assume this is my last battle. Oh, I can upgrade or unlock something? Oh, heavens, yes. Bring me the Shinobi. Wait, I got quests to open up. I have Cyber Orc Crusade, got me 100 gold. Cool. Temporal Paradox Pursuit also got me 100 gold. Look at me making all this progress. Well, it looks like I finished my drink. Ow. Well, the only course of action is to get another drink. I'll be right back. Not playing music, though. You have to live in silence. forgot my drink. My next drink. Well, guess the next course of action is to turn the music back on and spam the upgrade button. Shadow. And listen to Super Mario 64 sound font. Oh, so killing it, huh? I guess we'll do the Saint and vampires next. Now on the Ramon Golden Fire. rogue and a centurion. Brawler, heroic, wild. This is so fun. that for a ferry. them all. let's just do a frickin' battle. I'm too... but that happened. Wow, that's not good. But how many units were placed? Guess we'll find out in a second. My god, you guys are quick. 7. There's my rogue again. G gave me a pinning archer, a Colossus pinning archer, which slows down their targets. Thank you, Nigel. Pearly Whirly gave me a breacher earth tank. The breacher tank deals more damage against armored units. Thank you to the earth tank Pearly. Shironaga. Shironias Stream, thank you for the epic sludge artillery. The sludge artillery's explosive shells cover the ground in sludge that slows down enemies' movement and fires long-range explosive shells from a long range. Where's your other unit? Shironaya also gave me a focus level 30 Saint, which grants extra percent shooting against ranged attacks and has higher health values. And of course, JR926, thank you for a breacher tank level 30. And a level 30 Avaricious Necromancer. The Avaricious Necromancer has increased range. Orc the Mothership's Elite Guard. Its electric glide stuns its opponent and causes lightning to orc and damage nearby allies. Oh my god, how scary. And my Curse Skull, that does whatever that does. Just killing some bad guys, just Stream Raider. And we did it. We did it! One person gets 50 gold, the other gets 2 Paladin. I'm gonna do random. Pearly Whirly, you got the gold. JR926, you got the Paladin scrolls. Although Shironai, you deserved one of these rewards. Thank you for your help. I want to do one more. The ancient multiverse time-traveling orcs and various dream lives that to war for blah 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 blah. Okay. Actual last battle. For realsies. Well. Gosh. Okay. so close. I wasn't expecting a raid. Thank you. Holy crap. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Gel. Thanks for the follow. Call me Babushi. If you're wondering, yeah, I have the music just cranked all the way up. I'm just trying to, get through this game since it's only got a few hours left. Yeah, good thing the alerts are loud. Oh my god, thank you for the follow, Daniel. I hope you like my alert. It's the Mario Party 3 sound when you win the minigame. Oh, let me give you a shout out. I'm actually pretty tired. I wonder how much more I should go for. I'm equipping skins for some reason now. Let me give you all a shout out. Oh no, I misspelled your name. Sorry about that. Good night, Daniel. Rinmeedy? That takes me back. It's been a hot minute since I played Street Raiders with her, but I remember playing. I might have to just, I don't know if I can copy and paste. Damn it. Okay, we'll just try again. And there you go. Oh, we can make sure everybody gets a shout out. You're welcome. You're welcome, Daniel. Oh, we got one more person. Did I spell that correctly? I think I did. Call me. There we go. Anyone else I might have missed? I think we got them all. Thank you all for coming in and giving me a little attention today. The time is 4:13 a.m. Oh, hello, Mai. I gotta give you a shout out. I was in your stream last night, but I don't remember if I said hi. I think I said hi. I was pretty tired. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, and if you like my PNG tuber, don't get used to it. I'm going to upgrade to a 2.0 on my birthday, which is tomorrow. Yep. Ah, yes I did. Debut on my birthday, indeed. It's not on April Fool's. My birthday is actually on April 1. Is April's birthday actually on April 1 as well? Because if she is, we share birthday. We share a birthday. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Can you guess how old I'm going to be tomorrow? I think I'm getting pretty old. Yeah, birthday debut. I'm pretty excited. I might be a bit tired, though. There is plans for me other than streaming on my birthday. That thing being, I'm going out to dinner with my best friend and my family. You guys are very close. I'm going to be 27. pretty close. I was born in the 98. I don't remember the 90s too well, though. Almost all of my memories come after the year 2001. And honestly, I don't have too many memories of the early 2000s. Just a little bit. Forever 21, yeah. I'd like to think I'm still 21. Hard to believe that would have been in 2019. That's correct, Jill. I was 1 year old at the end. Then the 2000s began, and the world changed. I was born in the last century, and so were you. I think all of you guys were also born in the last century. My sister was born in '01, though. Me? Yeah. Oh. Binary, thank you for the epic Rin mini bomber. Heck yeah. Let's have a look-see at the battlefield. Ooh, look at all that. Is there anything you guys want to see me do? You used all your epic pots? Aw, man. No more epic potions? Yeah. Epic units are nice. I don't really know how I feel about the end of Stream Raiders. I've had a very mixed relationship with this game, but then I saw another person do their very last battle, and it kind of made me sad. Cool secrets. My best warp. I don't have a war cry. I don't have that. Oh, jeez. And this client. Well, I've never looked at the settings. So that's what the settings look like. I never bothered to play Dungeons or Versus because I didn't really enjoy either of those. My army is upgraded as far as it can go. I could extract souls from my level 30 units, except I don't have level 30 units. See, can't do any of that. That's a shame. I can extract scrolls as a viewer, though, in my viewer. Look at those extractions. I guess that's a cool little Easter egg. Jerry needs more research on this soul? Interesting. Well, I hope Jerry figures it out someday. I actually think that Versus was my least favorite one. I just never cared for the really short battles. Did they update the souls? Honest to God, I have no idea. I never bothered checking them until today. They've probably gone through some changes, but honestly, today is the first time I'm checking it. From client and from captain and viewer. We've got 8 minutes left. I'm thinking of doing one card game. Do you guys like Solitaire? Well, I gotta show the Solitaire game. I was playing Spider Solitaire last before I did all my goodies stuff on Stream Raiders. I usually play Solitaire while the battles are running and while listening to music. My last Spider Solitaire game took 20 minutes. It's definitely a long while. Have you guys ever played The Pyramid? I'm gonna guess not. So I'm gonna show you how this pyramid game works. It's lots and lots and lots of fun. Uh-oh. Unfortunately, ads. Hard game. I was probably talking about Solitaire. They got Spider Solitaire, Klondike Solitaire, which is the standard one, the one with the 7 columns. And then there's Free Cell. I never actually played Spider or Free Cell before I started playing here. But Pyramid's probably the most interesting one, because your goal is to match cards to 13 in this pyramid stack. So 8 and 5, those go together. 6 and 7 add up to 13. And then a jack and a 2 add up to that. Kings can just be clicked on since they're already a value of 13. You've played Pyramid? Cool. I became familiar with it a couple years back. And then once it got to the harder levels, the game takes a lot of strategy. It's surprisingly hard for just a simple match 'em up to 13 game. Oh, yeah, there we go. I tend to get pretty focused on these. So, pardon if I don't speak to chat for a few minutes. I will keep my eye closed. Alright, now I've got the outlier cards left. I need a 3 or an ace. There we go. Okay, now I need an ace or a 5. Now I need a 5. Right there. 2. Now I need an 8 or 4. Okay, now I need a 4 or a 10. Now I need a 4. And there we did it. Easy goal has been solved. Well, I guess I didn't make any points? Experience? Took just under 2 minutes. 64 games played, but I've lost 2. I can never get those losses back. Anyway, let's go for a slightly harder version. This one's medium difficulty. Ready, set, go. Okay. Need 9, 7, and 8. I can also do that, but it's not typically recommended that you do that. No. La 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 la, spring is in the air. And I'm a foul. Come on, need a 9 and a jack. No, wait, I need a 9, a 9. Uh-oh. I have to back up. Because I need to... This is where the strategy comes in. You don't want to eat up a 9 too soon. Ooh. Well, I can't do that. Oh my god. Okay. Let's start with that one instead. It's very weird playing this game in silence. Okay. Okay. I have to do that. I don't have a choice there. Gosh. I feel like I'm missing something here. Wait, am I already out of 9s? No, there's a 9 there. Okay. Hey, the battle's ready, but I'm going to do this first. Nope, nope, nope. There we go. No, I think this has to be it. It has to be done this way. Okay, now we need the 5. Oh, man. We were close. Hey, come on, come on, come on. Oh, whoa. Wait, this is a medium. I can't be failing on an easy game. What? Okay. Wait, what am I doing? Guys, I might need a little bit of help here. I hate asking for help, but I'm already stumped. And this is not supposed to be a hard one. There's no way I can get around that. Gotta be an 8. Alright, I think we got this. Be better. Never mind, I got it. That was a lot harder than I thought. 7.5 minutes? What the hell? I'm gonna play one more, but this time even harder. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to watch an ad. Yep, they're gonna force an ad on me. Give me something that's not that one ad. Oh boy. Well, we'll just have to see what happens, I guess. Oh. There's no more 6s here. We gotta change up our strategy already. That's not a... I don't think that's gonna work, actually. F. I don't understand, Joe. I don't understand. I think that's the way to go. F5. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. Okay, we're making progress. See? But we need a 9. What the fuck? Hey, I made it to level 4. I got a new card back. Okay, I'm gonna play the Stream Raiders battle now. Got a lot of people in here. All thanks to you, Gel, and thank you, Gel, Binary, Pi Blazar, Shirunaya Stream, and JR926 for placing units. A blob, a level 14 blob by Binaries. Thank you for the blob, Binaries. And Gel, thank you for a Bluebird Flying Rogue, level 16. Thank you, Shironaya, for a brutal level 30 Centurion. Those deal a lot of damage. JR926, thank you for a Mega Spin Buster, a volatile Mega Spin, which has a wider explosion blast area and high health values. Oh yeah. Duh. Thank you for a level 4 Cyber Artillery 2 Gel. Thank you for a Hex Dr. Dolar Healer. JR926. Thank you for the Epic Rin Mini Farsight Bomber. Binaries, that thing is super cool. And it has an Archer Soul infused in it. That's awesome. Oh, and thank you for the Altaru Healer. It's been a hot minute since she played Stream Raiders. I'll never forget playing battles between 2020 and 2021. Thank you for the Altaru Healer. Thank you for another Rinmini Farsight Bomber. Two of them. Feels old, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Champion Bomber. By JR926. JR926 also gave me a Breacher Nightmare Tank. I just have to look through everything for this, what will probably be my very last battle. Pi Blazar, thank you for a Poseidon Skylancer. Ooh, the Otaru Flag Bearer, thank you for that Gel. And thank you for the Bonsai Lancer as well. Pi. Thank you also for... Oh, did I go over the Champion Berserker? Honestly, I don't know. Martyr Saint. By Shirunaya, thank you for the level 30 Martyr Saint, which explodes on death. Summer Berserker. Oh, that thing's cool. The Rampaging Summer Berserker deals extra damage to armored units. Thank you, Shiro. I think this is everything. There's my War Beast again. Well, I do really love playing... Oh, let's get the Ancient Goblin Lord. A remnant of the old world that fires rapid bolts using long-lost technology. And we're up against Tech Freaks. Freaks and Tech Geeks and Bolt Staff. Are you ready to start this battle, guys? I think I am. I will be ending after this. Wow. Boom. We did it. We won our last battle. Someone's got to take these shinobi scrolls. Binary, Gel, do you guys want it since you're here and you help me out? Do you guys want the shinobi scrolls? I'm gonna give it to you, Binaries, because I don't think I've given you anything before, but I also don't think I've given anything to Gel. If there were 2 item rewards, I would give the other one to you, Gel. Okay? Promise. Man. You're welcome. I am going to miss this game. Oh, I guess I should collect some of the rewards I haven't. 20 flag bearer scrolls. 10 Orc Slayer scrolls. Let me find an emote to put in the chat really quick. If they'll ever load. There we go. $50 gold. And a ticket. A golden skin ticket. A final silver badge. $20 common spell tome. $50 gold. 30 paladin scrolls. 10 Templar scrolls. $50 meat. Nom nom nom. 15 healer scrolls. 20 more Templar scrolls. 50 more gold. Another skin ticket, why don't we? Final gold badge. $500 gold. 50 gold. 15 monk scrolls. Quests. I don't see any though. Let's upgrade the last of our units. Our flag bearer goes to 15, our healer goes to 5, our paladin goes to 5, 6, 7. Our monk goes to 4. No. Our monk goes to 4, our monk goes to 5. Our Orc Slayer goes to 5. Our Templar goes to 5. 6. 7. And that's that. I'm going to take a nap. Or go to sleep. Maybe if I've gotten enough sleep, I can play another battle. I feel satisfied ending it here. Somewhat satisfied. It's not the best place to end off, but I gotta end somewhere. I can't finish this whole game, and I can't stay up forever. But thank you guys for making this last battle a really good one. I'm going to raid my friend, who is streaming Monster Hunter, I think. Let's make it extra special. She's having a subathon right now. Day 3 of subathon. And it's her IRL account. I'm sorry. I have to end. It was so nice to see you guys, though. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for chatting with me, Binaries and Gel. And thank you for the raid, of course, Gel. I hope you will take good care of my friend. She's a very close friend of mine. And typically is VTubing. But this is her IRL account. And we've been pretty close friends for a few years now, so give her all the love you can. It was an absolute pleasure playing Stream Raiders for 4.5 years. I started in November 2020, and it ends today. I just can't believe it's all over now. I'm gonna get emotional. But thank you guys. I really did have a great time. Please take care. I'll be streaming again. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just sad to see this game go. Farewell, skins. Farewell, everything. Take care. Bye now. The end.